I don't care about your anxiety disorder, and neither should you. In this video, I'm going to be explaining why any diagnosis we get regarding anxiety doesn't define us and doesn't have to restrict our happiness. Let's do it. Welcome back to the channel, or if this is your first time here, I'm Tim Box. I'm a mind coach and therapist specializing in anxiety issues. For more than a decade now, I've been working with people one-to-one to help them overcome what they've often been told is an anxiety disorder. And today I'm going to tell you why the term disorder doesn't have to carry the weight you think it does and how you actually get past it. Now, I realise that might sound a bit controversial or even dismissive, but I want you to know that I'm in no way attempting to invalidate your struggle here. I've been on my own journey with anxiety, as you might even know if you've seen my TED Talk. But when I see a client, I have little to no interest in their anxiety diagnosis. This isn't because I don't care about how they're feeling, but because the label is actually irrelevant to the process of getting them past it. But let me break this down a bit. Here are, in no particular order, the 4 main reasons why I'm not tremendously interested in your diagnosis, and why you probably shouldn't be either. The first thing to understand is the transient nature of our emotions. Anxiety, like any other feeling, isn't a permanent state. Just because you're anxious today doesn't mean you'll be anxious tomorrow, or even in the next hour. It's amazing how often we assume our mental or psychological state is fixed when it actually shifts from moment to moment. The clients I see are constantly amazed and even skeptical when I tell them we'll be making these changes in just a few sessions. This is often because when we've been given an anxiety disorder label, we assume that must be because this is a fixed state. Nothing about the way we think, feel, or behave is actually fixed. Pinning your sense of identity or progress to a diagnosis often creates the assumption that this state is ongoing and immovable. In reality, our feelings are constantly shifting. Our emotions come and go, and the regularity and severity with which we experience them also changes as we learn and grow. Anxiety is just one of those ever-changing emotions. Let's get real for a moment. There is no blood test, brain scan, or genetic marker that confirms an anxiety disorder. We get diagnosed based on how we describe our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to someone else. By comparison, when we experience a medical issue, the first stage of diagnosis is to describe to a doctor the sensations we're feeling, and the second stage is for the doctor to then send us to have some tests to confirm what they suspect it might be based on our description. When it comes to anxiety disorders, that second stage never happens. The diagnosis comes from a conversation, not from an objective medical test. It's a subjective assessment based on how we describe what's going on and how that information is then interpreted by the professional we're talking to. Now, I'm not saying that makes a diagnosis unreliable or invalid, but it does mean the label of disorder isn't set in stone or biologically defined in the way we might be led to believe. That's why you'll often hear me talk about anxiety not being a medical issue, but an emotional issue. When it comes to getting to a better place with our anxiety, what matters isn't whether or not someone has diagnosed you with an anxiety disorder. What matters is how we address the way we're currently thinking and feeling. So I know the counter-argument to my last point is that diagnosis, however it might be arrived at, allows us to finally get some treatment. Knowing what's wrong is the first step towards making it right. But that's only a valid point if an official diagnosis in some way influences how we then work, which it doesn't. Looking after your mental health isn't something that starts with a diagnosis of a problem. And understanding and managing anxiety to the degree that the way you feel no longer disturbs you isn't a process that should start after it's already become a problem. Whether you've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or not, the way we work together to get you past it remains the same. The truth is, recovery isn't about whether or not you qualify for a disorder. It's about understanding your emotional responses and learning how to work with them rather than battle against them. When I work with clients, I'm focused on what's going on right now, not what label they've been given in the past. Put simply, the label doesn't determine the solution. One final and not unimportant thing to bear in mind is that the official criteria for anxiety disorders changes from year to year. What gets classed as an anxiety disorder today might be redefined tomorrow. So if we're basing our whole approach to mental health on whether or not we meet the current definition of a disorder, we're tying ourselves to something that can shift at any moment. What you need to remember is that anxiety isn't some fixed, permanent condition. It's an emotion, and emotions respond to changes in how we think, what we focus on, and how we approach life. Here's where we often go wrong. If we get too invested in our status as someone with an anxiety disorder, it can start to limit our perceived recovery options. Once we identify with that label too strongly, our mind starts to believe that anxiety is something we have rather than something we're doing. And when we believe that, it feels like it's outside of our control. It becomes something we think we can't influence, let alone fix. If we regard ourselves as having a disorder, we start to believe that overcoming anxiety is beyond us, that it's out of our hands, a condition that we have to learn to live with rather than something we can shift through understanding and practice. In short, we stop looking for solutions because we've already convinced ourselves it's futile. In many cases, the process of receiving an anxiety disorder diagnosis has simply caused more anxiety. It takes us from struggling right now to believing we'll struggle forever, and that anxiety about anxiety is what causes nearly all of the issues I see clients for. I want to end by reminding you of something important here. The word disorder simply means a state of confusion. That's all it is. It doesn't mean you're broken or fundamentally flawed. It just means your mind has got a little confused about how it should be responding in certain situations. So if carrying the label of disorder is actually causing more anxiety, why keep carrying it? If it's not helping you understand your emotional responses or guiding you towards solutions, then let go of it, because it's not serving you in any meaningful way. Letting go of the label lets us focus on what really matters, how you feel, how you want to feel, and how we can get you there. So no, I really don't care about whether or not you've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, because the label doesn't define you or restrict your recovery from any anxiety issue you're currently experiencing. Anxiety is just an emotional response, one we can work with and change, and no diagnosis will ever take away your ability to change. If you feel you're ready to stop focusing on the label and start focusing on progress, then check out the channel's members area, where you can access exclusive content and live weekly Q&A sessions with me. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video to help others be more than just an anxiety label. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind to your mind. I'll see you next time.